Welcome to the Austin Zaback Show, where every guest is meant to leave listeners inspired and motivated, propelling them to pursue their passions and live up to their full potential.
The first cosmetic revolution was like extreme makeover. Like that's when dentistry went from being kind of just drill and fill and taking teeth out to being, this profession where you could actually improve somebody's self-confidence. At one time we had 5 offices here in the Valley. And when you really stop and think about it, your mouth, it's like the one place in your body, like everything enters the mouth, right? And it's full of bacteria. Like it would make sense that there's a link to oral health and pretty much everything else that goes on in your body. So many entrepreneurs, business owners, they get in their own way because they're worried about like, what are the other dentists going to think? Or, are they going to judge my work? When I look at the things that have been just home runs for me and have been super successful, it's all the things I'm passionate about.
Dr. Brian Harris has done over 3,000 porcelain veneers in his career. He's worked on top celebrities and influencers all around the world. People travel to Biltmore, Arizona to see Brian Harris and Harris Dental. He's also an international speaker and educator. And from 2007 to 2021, he won Phoenix Magazine Top General and Cosmetic Dentist, also winning AZ Foothills Best Cosmetic Dentist in Scottsdale, Arizona. He's also the founder of SmileVirtual.com, the leading teledentistry platform connecting patients looking to improve their smile with qualified cosmetic dentists around the world. This is going to be a phenomenal podcast, so make sure you stay to the very end. Over 90% of the people that listen to the show have not yet subscribed or followed the show. And if you subscribe or follow the show, it greatly helps me go continue to get bigger and bigger names on the podcast for you to listen to. It would mean the world to me if you would take just a quick minute, subscribe on YouTube, or follow the show on any platform that you're listening on, and I will make it my mission to go out there and to get bigger and bigger names for you to enjoy. Again, it is really the only thing that I will ever ask from you, so it would mean the world to me. Now let's just go ahead and get right into it. So, Dr. Brian Harris, I appreciate you being on the show.
Of course, man. I was trying to think. I'm driving over here. Like, how long has it been since we first connected?
Yeah.
Maybe like,
dude, a while.
2 years, 3 years?
If not more.
Yeah, maybe more.
I'm almost thinking before COVID. Yeah, maybe it might be 5 or 6 years ago now. Yeah,
awesome.
If not longer. And I think I followed you even before that. And, I was talking a bit before the show, like, truly incredible. And obviously the audience just got to hear some of your accolades and the things that you've achieved and everything like that. And you've done a lot, and even to see where you've come in like the last 5 or 6 years. I feel like I was just telling you before the show, it's like every time I see a big celebrity or somebody that, posts on Instagram, them getting veneers or whatever it might be. You're right there, Dr. Brian Harris, and you're the one that is that's doing it. So, dude, congratulations to everything you've accomplished.
Thank you. Really, it's kind of wild to be here at this place. It's a pretty awesome place to be. I absolutely love what I do, both clinically, but also, just being able to be out and venturing into some other things too. But no, I appreciate that, and and I feel the same way about you. As the years have gone on, it's crazy just to see, one thing after the next, and just the growth is awesome.
I greatly appreciate that. Yeah. Well, for people watching, they just listened to a heck of an introduction, but how would you define, because you're very well diversified, I feel like now. Obviously, you own a dental practice, and you're in that world, but there's numerous different things that I feel like you do too. So how would you describe what you do today?
So the best way to describe what I do today, I still am very much involved in changing smiles pretty much every single day, but clinically 3 days a week. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's just smile after smile after smile. And about 65% of everything we do right now is people from out of state. We can talk more about that later, of just how social media has changed everything. But yeah, I consider myself a confidence builder. My kids make fun of me for saying that, but I feel like I'm more in the business of communication and building confidence than I am just doing dentistry.
I love that. Yeah, and I took a look at your website again, and I think you might have even redesigned it a bit since the last time I looked. But you have right on there, right? Building confidence. I think it's one smile at a time.
Yeah.
And I really do love that, and it's so powerful, right? So you personally then, 3 days a week, are actually working on people's smiles.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got
3
it.
long days. We don't take lunch, and it's just smiles all day long. And then I reserve Thursdays more for doing this type of stuff and working on the business. And then Friday through Sunday, I try to, keep open for my family.
Sure. You have an entire practice, though. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct.
And you work with your brother.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Talk to me about that practice. So, obviously you're in there, building confidence, kind of working on the smiles, 3 days a week. And in a little while, I want to talk too about how you're so routine regimented. I want to get into like how you've been able to manage your calendar and really do all of that. I think that'll be really interesting. But talk to me about your practice a little bit. I mean, when did you start your practice? What has it evolved into? How many dentists or dental hygienists do you have working there now? What does it look like?
Yeah, so the practice actually was started by my dad in 1979 here in Phoenix, Arizona. And so about the mid-90s was like the first, you're probably too young for this, but I'm old now. So I remember very clearly like the first cosmetic revolution, was like extreme makeover. Like that's when dentistry went from being kind of just drill and fill and taking teeth out to being, this profession where you could actually improve somebody's self-confidence. So my dad got into that early. So I got kind of this front row seat to what it would be like to be a cosmetic dentist. So my brother Eric ended up going into dentistry. I followed him about 2 years later. Scott followed me 2 years after that. And then my youngest brother, Cameron, owns a dental lab. And so, it's been just a big part of my life. Joined my dad in 2005, and we grew that practice to what is today. He since has retired about 3 years ago. And then Scott joined us at one time we had 5 offices here in the Valley. And then we sold off the other 4, and then Scott and I came together in the main, built more office, and the rest is history. So
yeah, I'm really excited to dive into too, like why you went from having 5 locations, back to kind of one main one. I think, in a little while, the business side of that I think will be very intriguing for any people watching or listening. Really quick too, I'm curious in terms of when we're talking about, and I'm naive to the world of dentistry,
yeah.
So you'll have to bear with me. When we're talking about like veneers and building confidence and doing things of that nature and actually doing that type of stuff, that is separate from just normal dentistry? And would you call that like aesthetic dentistry, or how would you define that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So cosmetic dentistry today is more this idea of changing your own smile to look different, obviously to look better, whether that's color, size, shape, whatever that may be. But then there's kind of subcategories, like some of that is like Invisalign or straightening your teeth. Some of it is what I call the smile shape procedure, which is taking your own like God-given teeth and just reshaping them to better shapes and whitening and calling it a day. So I think there's all different levels of cosmetic dentistry, but the main thing really is porcelain veneers, and actually a new porcelain hybrid product that I'm launching here this next month. We'll have to talk about that because that's I think that's going to change the game a lot.
Hey, really quick, I'm sure you already know, but I've done over 2,500 wholesale deals in my career, and me and my team consistently do anywhere from 1 to 2 wholesale deals a day. If you're looking to get better at wholesaling, or maybe you're brand new, you've never wholesaled a deal, I would actually love to coach you. I would love to mentor you, and I would love for you to be a part of our education program. All you have to do is go to www.flippinsimple.com, or you can find a link in the description down below and book a strategy session with my team to see if you would be a good fit for our coaching program. Again, this is our exact strategy and formula of how we are actually able to go out every single day and do anywhere from 1 to 2 wholesale deals a day. I would love to talk about that. And are we allowed to talk about it on the show in a little while?
Let's do it.
Great.
Yeah, for sure.
I love that you guys have a variety of different ways that you can really improve somebody's confidence, get their teeth looking better. I'm curious on maybe any insight too you might have before we kind of dive into that a little, of the importance of taking care of your oral hygiene just in general, maybe even some scientific statistics of, how many people actually take care of their oral hygiene. I mean, like, when we think about brushing our teeth and flossing and doing the things that can save our make them look good for a longer period of time till we're old, I mean, I feel like people aren't doing probably what they should be doing.
Yeah, 38% is statistically 38% of the population does not see a dentist on a regular basis. And I get it, and I live in that world, but it is, I mean, it's an investment, right? It's an investment financially, but also I think there's a lot of emotions around your smile, your mouth. Like, it's a very personal space. And it's not like the most fun thing to do and go and see a dentist. And so I think it's easy to have kind of that attitude of like, if it's not hurting or if there's nothing major, then I'm just going to let it be. But yeah, I mean, nowadays there's so many studies linking heart disease to oral health, so many studies, linking Alzheimer's to periodontal disease. And when you really stop and think about it, I mean, your mouth it's like the one place in your body, like everything enters the mouth, right? Like it's full of bacteria. Like, it would make sense that there's a link to oral health and pretty much everything else that goes on in your body. So it is a big deal.
Sure. Yeah. I was actually listening to a podcast this morning that the heart, right, when we look at heart disease, is the number one killer. I mean, really, over even cancer and all of the other things that kill people, it really is actually heart disease. Yeah. And when we look at the link and the correlation, again, I'm no scientist or anything of that nature. You know way more than I do. But to your point, the link between your gums and your oral health to your heart is there's a direct correlation there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very fascinating.
Well, and it's a silent killer a lot of times because you feel good, you look good, you don't think that there would be any issues, but then, on a smaller scale and a bacteria size level, there's just a lot of chemistry that's going on there that could be damaging your overall health. So yeah, I mean, I think the basics though, if you can just pick up some floss every once in a while, and brush on a regular basis, use any type of good mouth rinse that you like, that you're going to use regularly. Usually you can do a pretty good job of just keeping things at bay, just with the simple things alone. Yeah.
So talk to me a bit about the popularity of the porcelain veneer, right? Yeah. And the evolution of that. I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, for the last decade, maybe even, I mean, the popularity has significantly gone up. And not only that, I'd love to understand more the process of the porcelain veneer and understand, has that process also improved? And I think I'll let you, we'll start there and then we'll keep going. Yeah.
Okay. So, and cut me off if I'm going too long.
Sure, no, go as long as you want. Yeah.
So you have to understand, like, before, like when I first started practicing, the only way somebody would know that cosmetic dentistry was even available is if you, the dentist, had a photo album in your waiting room of like before and after smiles, right? That's what we used to do. And then people would ask about it, and then we could talk to them about the things that could be done. But other than that, the only other way would be going online, actively searching a doctor's website. And by the time you click 7 or 8 clicks into the website, you're finally where you can see some before and afters. And then even then, most doctors don't have good before and afters. And so the only way you'd ever know about it is if a friend has gone through it, or if your dentist happened to have a photo album in the waiting room. So fast forward now, 2017, that's when my world completely changed. And if I do have time to tell the story,
sure, okay. Yeah.
So I think it's important to know this. So at the time I came home And, I was doing maybe one smile case every 2 weeks. So one porcelain veneer case every 2 weeks. And I came home, was having a conversation with my wife of just like, man, it would just be awesome if that's all I could do, because I'd love it. And she's like, well, then you just need to do more of that. And at the time I'm like, it doesn't work that way. You can't just only do what you love, because there's a supply and demand issue. And she's like, no, Brian, the problem is everyone knows you're a dentist. Nobody knows what you do. They don't know unless they've been in your practice to see it. And she said, check out some of our friends. Like, they're posting their stuff on social media, like on Instagram at the time. She's like, you should post your before and afters there. So that was, I think, when social media, when I finally realized the power of social media, and more importantly, the power of social proof, of like the ability to say, like, here's who I am, here's what I do, here's the kind of people I treat. And once I started just posting that, I mean, everything just exploded from there.
It's insane to watch. Yeah. How many, do you have any idea how many you've done? How many porcelain veneers you've done?
Oh, geez. I have no idea.
If you had to ballpark it.
I've never even done that calculation.
Yeah.
So roughly 2 to 3 cases a day is kind of the average right now. And each case is anywhere between, sometimes it'll be just like 4 or 6, but most of the time it's 10, sometimes it's 20 per case. But I mean,
how many smiles?
I would say, if I had to guess, I don't know at this point, maybe 2,000, 3,000.
Yeah.
Like,
big number.
Quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Really big number. And
actually, no, more than that, quite a bit more than that. So I'll calculate that, and I'll get back to you on that, because I actually want to know myself.
Yeah,
for sure.
Might be 4 or 5, right?
Yeah.
Which is a ridiculous number, And obviously now you're trusted by celebrities, you're trusted by massive influencers, you're trusted by really all walks of life to get in there and get them I don't even want to say the perfect smile, but the perfect smile for them.
Yes.
Right.
So what you just said there is like, that's everything. So when we talk about like what is cosmetic dentistry, I think that's a good segue into that, because there was a time where cosmetic dentistry was just whatever the dentist told you was acceptable. And there's still a lot of that happening today, where people will go and get their smile done and they want a certain look, but the dentist is like, nah, that's not going to look good on you. Or you don't want to go that bright, or you don't want that kind of look. You want this type of look. Because for a while, we were the ones responsible for directing like what was aesthetically pleasing. The problem now is that with social media, I mean, how it is, in seconds, you can see thousands of examples of smiles. So now it's not a doctor-driven process anymore, in my opinion. It's a combination of figuring out what it is that the patient wants and then being able to give that to them. So you said like, it's whatever it is to them that they feel is like an ideal smile. And that's the hard part that a lot of dentists are having a problem with, is patients want one thing and they're giving them something else. And I think that's one of the reasons, why people would come to Phoenix to have this done. I mean, there's fantastic dentists all over. My process really is more focused on like helping people get exactly what they want, instead of me just telling them like, no, this is what you should do.
Which is phenomenal. So talk to me about that process,
Yep.
From the time that somebody finds you on Instagram or whatever to them, do they call you? Do they go on the website? They obviously at a certain point they fly down here. What is the process, from start to finish of really working with you?
Yeah, so I talked about it in 2017, started posting on social media, and within a couple of weeks, had somebody reach out, send me a message, and I was like, damn, my wife was right. I started posting, now people know what I do, and so they were reaching out. And with that first patient, her name was Kendall, I went to just message her back and say, call the office, come in and see me, which is what we normally would do, because you want to build somewhat of a relationship. You don't want to just be a commodity. You want to be able to at least connect with somebody face to face before you give them your fees, right? That's like the old world thinking. But I realized with social media and with the power of technology, I was like, I wonder if what if I recorded a video of myself explaining to her my recommendations, going over options, and giving her a price quote, and I just sent it to her. So that was in January 2017, the first virtual consult I ever recorded. And she showed up 2 weeks later. She moved forward with treatment. And that was kind of when I really woke up to this idea that we make it really, really difficult for people to do business with us. I think in all businesses throughout the world, like most people just want to know, what are my options? What is it going to cost? And can I trust you?
Wow.
And so using video to connect with people that way has changed everything. So I went on to, that's how Smile Virtual was born. I went on to develop a software platform that all dentists, it's the number one video consult platform right now in dentistry, where doctors can connect with people from all over, give them an idea of what their options are, what it's going to cost, and then invite them in for a visit. And that's changed the game.
And that all happened as a result of your wife telling you, put yourself out there, you can do it, right? And then also as a result of you getting the message from Kendall and saying, hey, how can I be ahead of the curve here and not do what everybody else is doing? And I love that, and you're so right. I think in every industry, I'm in real estate, obviously, and when you look at every industry, a lot of them are like dinosaur industries, and they're not adapting with the times. Like they either don't make the time to do something as simple as what you're talking about, or they don't want to, or whatever it might be. It's wild.
Well, I hear you talk all the time on this podcast about, and you've talked a lot about it just on social media, of like not caring so much about what other people think. I think so many entrepreneurs, business owners, they get in their own way because they're worried about, like, what are the other dentists going to think? Or, are they going to judge my work? Or are they going to think this is stupid? And I think it prevents people from really stepping into their true potential as like a business owner. And I've heard you talk about like, you don't care. Like when you get out there, you don't care what other realtors or wholesalers or other business owners, tech entrepreneurs are doing. Like you're doing your thing because it's what excites you, and it's working. And I think the sooner you realize that it's not about anybody else except me and whoever's looking at my content that is self-conscious of their smile. Like that's all I care about, because if I can just get in front of them and let them see who I am, then they'll want to work with me.
Yeah. I love that. So before we go, and because I want to talk about Smile Virtual in a little while, and I want to talk about numerous other things, including the new thing that you're working on and developing right now. Before we go down that rabbit hole, I want to fully understand the porcelain veneer and understand the pros and cons, so that people watching can understand that if they maybe have ever thought about doing it. I think there's maybe a misconception, or maybe it's true, I don't know, back in the day, and I don't know where it was born, that like you basically had to grind all of your teeth down to nothing to get the porcelain veneer, and then if for some reason, whatever, I don't know, I mean, like you were stuck, right? And I'd love to understand if that is true, and kind of that process. How many actual teeth typically do people do? Like, is there an average? Are people doing the uppers, the lowers? I'm sure there's actually a name. I apologize. I'm not in that world. Yeah.
So the porcelain veneer concept in its simplest form is essentially you're just taking a piece of porcelain that's hand fabricated, kind of piece by piece. And when it's bonded to the actual tooth structure, like it just becomes part of your body, right? So that's the idea, is it gives you the freedom. So oftentimes people will be like, I hate my smile, I want it to look better. So they'll go through braces and they're done. And then they're like, well, it's still my smile, it's just straight. And so the porcelain veneer lets you change color, shape, size, position. It lets you essentially design whatever it is that you want. So I kind of categorize into two categories. One is like an upgrade, and then the other is like a transformation. An upgrade is like 4 teeth, 6 teeth, 2 teeth. It's just changing the shape of some to make it flow better. Like my own natural teeth, I have veneers, my own natural teeth, I have what are called peg laterals under these teeth right next to my front 2 teeth, which are just really tiny teeth. So sometimes it's just like 2 veneers over 2 teeth, and that gets you the look. So smile upgrade. Transformation is more of like doing 10 on the top or 10 on the top and 10 on the bottom. That's more when you're like, I want a different smile. I want something brighter, bigger, fuller. And so that's how it's done. Now, how the tooth gets prepped underneath is a really important part of it. The most common thing that can happen if things aren't designed right is that veneers can pop off, or that you can have sensitivity, or that the gums can get inflamed. So those are all the things, like those are all would be the reasons not to do it, or at least do it with somebody who has experience. And there's a ton of amazing cosmetic dentists out there to choose from. But if they're designed right, and if the doctor's being, as conscious as they can of preserving tooth enamel, it can be a fantastic long-term solution.
Wow.
15, 20 years, your whole life, if you take care of them. The problem is, like anything else, if it's not done the right way, it's a lot of money to spend for like a lifetime of problems if you're not careful.
Sure. Yeah. And yeah, it's so fascinating, like when it's done properly, right? And they come to somebody like you that really is taking the time to design them perfectly. I mean, the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Can that person really even tell that they have them on after a certain period of time? I mean, do you talk a little while ago about like the tooth bonding, the porcelain bonding and becoming one with your body almost. Like, does there come a point where it just is totally normal?
Yeah, I think in most cases, yes, because it just becomes now I never think of my teeth as like my tooth and then my veneer. It's just, they're just my teeth, right? And so I'll eat apples, I'll eat corn on the cob. Now there's certain things that you want to avoid, like, stripping wires or like biting nails or things that you shouldn't do anyways that will wear down your natural teeth. You can chip veneers. It's pretty rare nowadays. Materials have gotten so much better over the years. They're super strong now. But when they're designed right, it should feel like just an extension of your body. It should not feel like, I think a really bad example, people think, they go and get their nails done. So they think like, oh, it's just like that for your teeth. Completely different because the teeth don't continue growing. And it's chemically, it's like you can't take these off. Like once they're on, the only way to get them off is to grind them off one at a time.
Wow. Yeah. Fascinating. So talk to me a bit then about the new thing that you're working on launching. You're working on a new product, right?
Yep.
And will that be some form of better version of the porcelain veneer, or what are you working on?
So right now, there's 2 things happening within cosmetic dentistry. There's the porcelain veneer process, which is, it's going to be anywhere, and it depends on where you live, but let's just say like $1,800 per tooth up to like $3,000 to $4,000 per tooth in some of the bigger cities.
That's the average right
That's
now.
the average cost, yeah. But let's just call it $2,000 a tooth to keep it simple.
Sure.
That's porcelain, right? So it's an amazing solution, but for most people, you're talking, 20, 30 grand to drop to fix a smile. Like it's a big investment. The alternative is composite veneers, which is just building with, like if you ever have like a tooth colored filling, it's that same filling material, but then just building on top of the teeth to get it to look better, which ends up being, we'll call it like $1,000 per tooth to get that done. Still a big investment, but now it's human error. So they're built up in multiple layers. They stain easier. They can break. There's a lot of downsides to composite. So the upside of composite is you can usually be more conservative. You don't have to grind the tooth away. You're just kind of building on top of what there is. So you have kind of these 2 products. One is man-made by hand, doesn't last as long, stains, but is still kind of expensive. But then you have the other that's made by a ceramist, that looks a lot better, doesn't stain, lasts a long time. So what we're getting ready to launch is what's called a porcelain composite hybrid, which is something really in between, that's designed like a traditional porcelain veneer. It's designed by a ceramist, but they're making it out of a composite material infused with the porcelain. So it's stronger than composite. It doesn't stain like composite. It's not man-made every step by hand. Like it's designed artistically like a porcelain veneer. The downside is we don't know yet, longevity. So typically with something like that, we're looking 7 years, 10 years. You're not going to get the 15 to 25 maybe that you would out of regular porcelain, but you could.
Yeah.
And it's coming in at a price point that's about half the cost of what porcelain is going to be. So not everyone's a candidate. I would say probably of the people that I see, maybe 30% to 40% would be a candidate. You've got to have smaller teeth. So it's mostly like an additive process. So smaller teeth, spaces, something where you can just kind of add on and build up to get the ideal look. Like if you have really crooked teeth, or if the teeth are flared, or if there's multiple cavities or fillings, things like that, that's going to be more just traditional porcelain.
Interesting. So then that kind of has me thinking, is there anybody that even like the porcelain veneer you turn away? Like, are there people with certain types of teeth or anything like that where you're like, hey, I wouldn't even recommend doing like a porcelain veneer?
Very rarely. I mean, usually the thing about porcelain is technically a veneer covers just the front of the tooth. But if there's like severely worn teeth, or if there's previous crowns or cavities or things like that, you use the same porcelain, you just cover it up with like a crown. And so porcelain veneers, porcelain crowns, I mean, it's rare that we have to turn somebody away. The big things are if they have severe gum disease where the teeth are loose, or let's say they have, of the top 14 teeth, they only have like 6 or 7. Something where if we were to build on top of that, it would cost a lot to do it, but then the long-term outcome wouldn't be super great. So that's when people kind of get more into the dental implant side of things, or like just replacing the entire arch of teeth with implants.
Got it. Interesting, which is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah,
doing implants. And do you guys do that?
We do, yeah. We don't do the actual surgeries. We do all the restorations, so all the teeth that screw into the implants. But we've got some pretty awesome surgeons here in town.
Yeah, I bet. 'Cause how many total people do you have in your current office, the one that you have in Biltmore?
Yeah, so there's four doctors. Myself, my brother Scott. We have Dr. Emily Cowan, who's awesome. She's been with us now. I don't want to mess this up. I think 10 years. And
long time.
Yeah, she's amazing. And then Rick Martin has been with us a handful of years now. Total stud. Just
truly incredible.
Great people.
Yeah. So really quick too, talk to me about, you go from 5 offices down back to the 1 office, was that a business decision? I mean, what was that what was the thought process, I guess, there?
Yeah. So we had the main Phoenix office, and super successful practice. And we kind of built the brand off of this idea of just amazing customer service with kind of like this family practice / cosmetic vibe. And so it was kind of one of the first of its time.
Hey, real quick, I don't know if you know, but I have a totally separate YouTube channel that you probably haven't checked out before. And it's just called Austin Zaback. And I've actually started a new series on that channel where I break down wholesale deals, okay? Wholesale deals that we've done in our business. And I show you step by step how we got the deal, how we sold the deal. I break down all the numbers on the deal, and I even show you the HUD of the deal, so we're not playing around. Now, I don't know how long you've been following me, but I do anywhere from 1 to 2 wholesale deals every single day. And my goal is to get to 100 deal breakdowns on that YouTube channel. So definitely, if you haven't already, go check it out. I'll link it down in the description below. And without further ado, let's just go ahead and get back to the show.
And it was great. We started getting to be too busy, and we needed to expand. So we were trying to decide, like, okay, do we build out another office space and expand like this current space? Like, do we acquire the space next to us and expand this space? Or do we start to expand in different parts of the valley? And because it was my dad, myself, my other 2 brothers, it was like, you know what, we could just expand. And we opened up a Queen Creek office, Mesa, Scottsdale, and Chandler. And it actually was great. We did that for about 4 or 5 years. But what we realized is it's really hard to replicate yourself somewhere else if you're not in the practice. So it was a tough thing to replicate the culture, to replicate, if a doctor wanted to, it was still called Harris Dental. So if they wanted to see a Harris and there wasn't a Harris working there, that was kind of a challenge. But I think the biggest thing was just, I was doing one day up in Scottsdale, one day in Mesa, one in Phoenix, and it's right when everything started getting really busy, right about 2017, 2018. And we just said, you know what, we're better off just being in one spot, let the people come to us and just like really focus on being amazing in one place instead of being all over.
And I really do like that a lot. I mean, I think that, when we're looking at being incredible at one thing, I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, we scale too quickly for our own good. I've been there, and there's the old saying that if you chase two rabbits, you'll catch neither, right? And, granted, obviously you can scale multiple things, but then to your point, will it be spectacular? Will it be phenomenal? Will the thing that you're building truly be something that is just out of the world, So I really can, understand why you did that. And I think that, to see, where you've done and what you've accomplished is truly incredible. I'm curious on Start, the company you founded. Remind me of the name.
Smile Virtual?
Smile Virtual, yeah. So where was that idea born? Where did you, obviously you started implementing that, right? But then, I could imagine, starting that whole separate thing. That is out, or at the time was probably outside of kind of your area of expertise. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. So I absolutely love my passion is cosmetic dentistry, but I've always had this excitement or this desire to just like grow other stuff too. And so back in 2005, I started an online education company, and it was a total failure, but I learned so much from it. And I shouldn't say a total failure. It was great. It didn't make me any money, and it cost me a lot of time, but it's kind of what gave me my start within the dental industry as a speaker and as an educator. And so I've always kind of had this idea of like having something outside of dentistry, but was still involved with dentistry, kind of like what you've done here. You've built an amazing ecosystem of things that all kind of support, the housing world. And so that's kind of where it started. And I think what happened is, as I started recording these videos and I realized like, okay, I need to do this, but I need to have a way, because before I would record and send via email, and then it would be this massive video file that was in my Google Drive, and it just was, and it wasn't HIPAA compliant. It was all these things. And I was like, okay, I gotta have a better system for this. And as I started looking into building that, and I was like, I wonder if, like, what if we just tested this with 20 of the top cosmetic dentists in the U.S. And when I saw that it worked in all their offices, like everywhere from like small towns, Salina, Kansas to Beverly Hills, then I realized like we were onto something. Yeah. And then at that point, that's when I thought, you know what, makes sense to partner with the right tech team, build something out, and kind of go after that dream.
Sure, yeah. And were you worried about anybody taking your idea at the time?
Oh yeah, it happened multiple times.
Yeah.
And I've just learned over the years, like, to me, it's just fuel for the fire. Like I have a competitive nature to me when it comes to that kind of stuff, where it just made me always want to stay 2 or 3 steps ahead. But yeah, it happens, and it's fascinating when it happens. It always happens by the people you wouldn't think that it would happen by, and you're like, oh wait, I thought we were good, and then you just stole my idea and went and did your own thing. But I think it's life.
The nature of the game. Yeah. And if anything, it shows you that you're on the right track, right?
Yeah. It's like you first get pissed, and then you're like, what's this? And then you're like, okay, I'm going to fuel this to be better. And then you start looking at like, okay, when you see it happening more and more, then it's just more of a compliment.
Sure.
But you're on the right track, and you just got to keep running.
Yeah. I'm curious, going back, to the porcelain veneers, talking about the marketing and your ability to go from where you were to really working on and helping and building smiles for some of the top celebrities, big, massive influencers. I mean, people that have a lot of brand recognition, fame, potentially tons of accolades. I mean, these are, I hate to idolize too much, but they're highly influential people in the world, right? What were the challenges of kind of going from, where you were to kind of dealing with this maybe upper kind of echelon, I guess, of a human being, and was it just social media that kind of like word of mouth, or was there anything else that you did to kind of go that direction, or was it just kind of on accident?
No, I would like to say it was deliberately planned out. It wasn't. I was kind of learning as I went, but I definitely learned a ton about, the right way to do it. So I think what most people forget about anybody with influence, whatever that may be, is they forget that these are real people with like real concerns, and they're people that have a lot of eyeballs on them all the time. So I'll have Dennis ask me sometimes, like, how should I start just reaching out to influencers? Like, should I offer them a discount? Should I give them 50% off? And I'm like, whoa, slow down for a minute, because first off, these are people that are known. People know who they are, what they look like. They know what their smile looks like. Like, their biggest fear is doing something that's going to change their look, because everyone's going to talk about it, right? So you got to slow down and first recognize that before you approach anybody, you have to gain their trust first and show and like prove to them in the world that like you're good at what you do. And so it started off by just documenting some of these cases. And then I had somebody come in locally that had influence, but I'm talking 800 followers, right?
Yeah.
But influence, like somebody who a lot of people like here in town liked and they thought was funny. And so I did her smile. And when she posted about it, it was like other people of influence were then like, okay, she trusted him, so maybe I can trust him too. And it's kind of crazy looking back. You see how it just kind of grew little by little. And then the more people I did that had a big influence, the more influencers would see that like, I can trust this guy to do my smile. And then it just gets to a point where, people trust you. And that's the great thing about social media is you can't really fake it. If your work's out there for everybody to see. So,
is that nerve-wracking at all? I mean, thinking about like listening to you elaborate on that almost like reminds me of like the surgeon who's on call when somebody really important like has an accident, and that surgeon, like their life is like in their hands. Yeah. And it almost kind of reminds me of that when you talk about like there's a lot of eyeballs on the people that you're working on, right? And how have you dealt with the pressure of that?
Yeah, so I think I always go back to, for me, remembering that it's all, at least in my world, it's about like you can go with a color that's super bright if you get the shapes of the teeth right. So it's more about coming up with a design that's going to work with the harmony of the face. You can make drastic changes as long as it's within harmony, and it comes down to like proportions and measurements and all that. Like it works. So we've had some radical transformations on some really big names that never got talked about because we found the right balance in the teeth size and shape is the best way to put it. Mm-hmm. And so it's not nerve-wracking as long as I'm aligned with who I'm working with. If somebody starts asking for things that are way outside the norm or that I know are going to be way too big or not look good, then that makes me nervous because I know other people are going to notice it too. But that doesn't happen all that often. I guess it doesn't make me nervous because of how my process is set up. People always get at least 2 chances to kind of preview the final product before it goes in. So if there's ever going to be something where we're off, like let's say something was too big or wasn't the right shape, there's multiple chances to change that before anything's permanent.
Interesting. So you've never the day of, right? The morning of, big names coming in, somebody's coming in, and it's just a normal morning for you. You just wake up, go to the gym, drink your coffee.
It is now. I mean, there was a time where I would stress out a little bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the first couple people of influence you see, you're like, oh, dude, I hope this goes well.
Yeah.
And because there's the clinical side, there's like the actual like doing the thing, but then there's the whole artistry side and the emotional side. Like you're working on a real human that has emotions and may have fears of going to the dentist or that doesn't want to feel pain. So it's kind of juggling that, like making sure that I execute the details, but then I execute the artistry and that like I'm present emotionally for my patient too.
Sure. You talk about doing speaking and different engagements, and you've been doing that, I know, for a long time. Are you passionate about teaching other dentists? And what about that, I guess, is kind of your goal? Do you want to do more of that in the future? Is that something you've kind of left in the past? How do you kind of view that?
Yeah, it's definitely evolved. So I used to do a lot of, I've been on the lecture circuit, I've been in practice 19 years, and like 17 years of that have been on the lecture circuit, meaning like traveling to speak to groups of dentists, from all over. I used to really enjoy more of like the smaller meetings, more very specific on certain procedures. And then it kind of evolved, and I really like doing more of the over the shoulder where they're in my office, 10 or 15 at a time, like watching me work. Now I've kind of found that sweet spot. What I enjoy now most is just where I can have the largest impact. If I can be somewhere and have an impact on 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 doctors at a time, I just feel like I'm providing more value. Sure. And most of my content now is more based on patient communication, like connection, social media, like more of the helping doctors understand that, if they want to do more of what they love to do, it's absolutely possible. But, you have to start seeing things differently when it comes to your business and when it comes to patient care. You have to see people as people and not as just numbers or procedures. And I think...
Do you think that's the biggest mistake that people make?
I do.
Yeah.
I do, because I think, and it's easy when it's your profession and your livelihood depends on it, but then you've got a team of 25 people. It's easy to get stuck in someone's here for a consult. Okay, we got to close this case, because if we do, then we can put on the books for November and we'll hit November's goal. And, that's the business side of dentistry. Years ago, I stopped thinking that way, and I truly try to show up with everybody from a place of like, whether they move forward or not, I'm good either way. Like, I just want to be fully present with no place to get other than just letting them know what's possible. And what's crazy is when you can do that for people, when you can just be there to help them, naturally things get busier, things grow, because people don't feel like they're being sold. I don't want to ever again practice from a place of feeling like I'm having to sell something. I just want to be able to show up, help people, and the ones that are ready will move forward, and the ones that aren't, it's still a huge service to them. They know what's possible, and then when they are ready, they will.
Sure. Yeah. I preach that a lot in my companies. I talk about not selling, and we have a company now called One Roof Real Estate, and that was born because I wanted to provide multiple different options to a homeowner or a buyer, right? And not just one option. Most realtors, they have one option. I can list your house, right? Yeah. And we go in with 5 or 6 or 7 different options, and it doesn't feel like a sale. It feels like, hey, we're really here to help you. And based on whatever situation you're in, we believe that we do have a solution that'll work for you, but we want to figure out basically which one will be the best. And we've seen a massive growth factor as a result of that, right? Same thing as what you're describing. Do you think it is difficult for new people, whether it be in dentistry or in anything, to balance that? I think we see a lot of young people, get in, and I can speak to it too, as I'm sure you can in the beginning. Like when you're brand new, it's almost like you're hungry to get to the end goal, and you maybe don't have a lot of money, and it's like, yeah, you want to like really put people first and like care about people, but you also like, and it's almost hard to manage when you're like, how does somebody manage that when they're first getting started?
I think it's important to notice, like right now, especially, and you've seen it on social media, I feel like there's kind of two schools of thought when it comes to sales. You see a lot of these sales gurus and coaches coming in when it's all about like you as whatever you're selling, coming in like confident, looking good, like being a powerhouse, going in and just like dominating the sale, right? And trying to convince somebody to buy something. And I think that sometimes when you're new and you are trying to get going, it's easy to look at that and be like motivated by that, because thinking about it any other way feels weak. It feels like, well, if I go in and I'm just there to help somebody, then nobody's going to buy from me. But it's different. You know, it's one thing to not be confident in what you're selling. It's another thing to be so confident in what you're selling, like you can set people free. And just, you know, what I mean by that is, like you said, you walk into that house, or when I sit down with the patient, be able to say, hey, listen, regardless of what happens today, like, I just want you to know what's possible. And then you can decide if this makes sense for you. And like when you can really mean that and set people free so they don't feel like they're being sold, then it sets you free so you don't feel like you have to sell. And then I think that's all the difference.
So powerful.
So I think sometimes what happens though is some people like that are selling will set themselves free and be like, well, I don't care but they forget to set the person free of like, hey, I'm not here to sell you anything, truly. Like, let's figure this out. If it makes sense, then you'll get it.
Yeah. It is a new way, you know, and I actually am a big proponent of that. You know, I think the old car salesman approach is just not, it doesn't work as much anymore.
Yep.
You know, because I think as a society, we look at, like, we're being sold in every direction.
Yep.
You know, you're going to drive, we're going to get out of the podcast, and you're going to drive back to your office, and there's going to be 100 billboards between here and there, and you're going to hear an ad. You might listen to a podcast. Maybe there's an ad in there and whatever else. And we almost like are shut down, I think, as a society. And I think that the new approach of like making people feel comfortable and like they have a choice and like you're really authentically there to help them is almost the new way, in my opinion. I
think so.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is you have to. Have you ever read the Go Giver?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's that mentality, right? It's value, value, value. And then when people are ready to reciprocate, when they're ready to buy, they'll buy from you. But you can't just expect people to buy because you're good at what you do or you're well known. Like, you have to provide value. And so I think just that mentality of just looking for ways to provide massive value, it's hard for people because it's time. You're giving up time. You're giving up your expertise. Every time I sit down to record a video consult, it's 10 minutes of my time, and I'm doing it for free for somebody that may or may not move forward with treatment. Actually, statistics show 50% of the time, they don't immediately move forward with treatment, right? But I still do it from a place of like, I'll show up the same for everybody requesting a consult, because at some point in their life, if they are going to do this, when they are ready, like, I'm confident enough, like, they'll choose me. It's just that right now, 50% of the time, people are like, oh, okay, it's more than I thought it was going to be. Or that's not what I thought it was. I don't need that yet. And, but being able to give that to people, you know, as a gift of your expertise, then, you know, when they're ready, they'll move forward.
They will.
Yeah, in my opinion.
You're memorable.
Yeah.
They're going to remember you. You're actually making an impact on their life, you know, and I was telling my fiance, like, at some point I do want to get veneers. You know, I didn't move forward a couple of years ago. For listeners, a lot of my listeners know, you know, when I was a kid, somewhere along the way, I had developed a lisp with my S's. Yep. And I've been working on it for years now and practicing and getting my tongue placement to where it's not as bad. And but, you know, I say that to say that if I woke up tomorrow and tomorrow was the day, you're the first guy I'd call. Right? Because, again, you made an impact on me. You know what? It's not that we're friends and I've got your phone number and all that. It really was back then. It was just that you made an impact.
Yeah.
You know, you went out of your way. And your brother, and you guys were professional and nice, and I mean, it was just like all of that, and that makes them, you know, when somebody goes even 2, 3, 4 years down the road, to your point, a decade, you don't forget about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like you remember that.
Can we go a little deeper on that real quick? I'm going to ask you a question because
Sure.
I think this is really important for people to understand that, like, you're the perfect example of this because you don't need anything, right? Like, you've got a great smile, you've got a good brand, like you have confidence already. Like, a smile is not something you need, but you've dabbled a little bit because it's like, I don't know, maybe. So for me, it's not my smile, but it's like my nose, right? I was self-conscious of it when I was younger. And so throughout my life, I've always been like, man, if I were to do something, I would get a nose job. I get my nose a little bit smaller. But at this point, I don't do anything. Why? Because I don't really know who's the best. I don't know what it costs. I don't know how much time I'm going to have to take off of work. But like, I'm all like emotionally, mentally, like I would pull the trigger tomorrow, like if everything lined up right and it made sense. But I'm not doing it now because it's inconvenient. So I think a lot of people are in your very similar situation where, like, this isn't something, like, you could go either or. And you're still going to have a great smile and it's not going to really impact life drastically. But you may get to that point where you're like, okay, I'm ready now. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Am I wrong in saying that?
No, and to be honest with you, for me, I can tell you, the day will come where I do it, you know? And again, it's not something I'm really self-conscious about. I would say I'm probably more self-conscious about my lisp than anything. Like when I pronounce an S and my tongue placement and the way that I show my teeth when I pronounce a particular word. But, you know, I very similar to you, you know, I've chosen to be confident anyways, because I know that I've got a lot of other value to provide the world. And if people are going to judge me based on that, well, then we were never meant to be friends anyways. Right. But to your point, though, for me and me only, I would love to eventually get veneers because I think that it would just, you know, walking up to the mirror or watching a video back, you know, I film a lot of content, and seeing my version of what perfect teeth would look like on me, I think would just brighten my day that much more. Like, it would just make me that much more like, oh man, like I'm really proud of myself. Like, I really show up in the world and I take care of myself, and because it's all the same, right? It's like how you do anything is how you do everything, you know? So, hey, real quick, I don't know if you know, but I actually wholesale real estate nationwide, and I have buyers all over the nation looking for incredible deals. So if you're a wholesaler and you locked up a deal and you're struggling to find a buyer, I would love to partner with you up on it, and I would love to help you sell it. All you have to do is text me 480-418-5339 and just let me know that you have a deal that you need help selling. Again, the phone number is 480-418-5339. Let me know that you have a deal, you want me to bring a buyer. Somebody on my team will reach out to you right away, and we will help you get it sold. Now, let's just go ahead and get back to the show. You know, if I'm really proud of my smile, then maybe I go to the gym and I lift a little bit more weight because I'm really proud of how I woke up and looked in the mirror, and then I maybe choose to put a little bit of a healthier food in my body, and over time, you know, you end up being proud of who you've become. Yeah. You know, which I think for anybody watching is super important, you know.
No, I agree. And I think that ultimately, I used to think it was more, you know, when I was young and more naive, of like, people do certain things because they just want to look better, or, you know, they want to be perceived in a different way. And as I get older, I think a lot of times it's more about like how I feel about myself. So perfect example, we both have a love of like exotic cars, right? And we both know, like, it's really fun to drive fun, fast cars. But at the end of the day, like, it kind of wears off, right? And then at the end of the day, you're like, it's just a car. The difference, whether it be a smile or whether it be some sort of other aesthetic procedures, like, you get to experience it every day. And you get to carry it with you in every conversation, like ordering at a restaurant, or, you know, on a plane meeting somebody new, or in business with somebody else, where like when it's an extension of you, it is different, you know, other than just being, you know, this thing that you purchased.
Sure. Yeah. Having a watch or a car or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, well, I don't know exactly how the old saying goes, but like your handshake and your smile.
Yeah.
You know, when you meet another human being and you look at them in the eyes and you smile at them and you shake their hand, right? We judge people based on that. I mean, whether we realize it or not, right? Sure. We're judging. You know, if I get in an elevator with you, and you look at me and the presence of you is very authentic and sincere. You have a great smile and you shake my hand and you have a great handshake. I'm like, dude, I like this guy. I don't have to know anything about you, right? Yep. And I think that is obviously important for everybody out there too to understand that, you know. And I really love that. I want to talk just for a moment. I know, and I've had you here for a little while, but you know, I'm always curious when we get through all of that and we talk about how you've gotten to where you're at and all that good stuff. I'm always curious then how somebody like you, so driven, so motivated, have done so much in your career. You know, what do you do that makes you happy? How do you stay balanced? I mean, you know, I've had a lot of people on the show and I've listened to a lot of other shows, and I've found that a huge commonality in high performers and high achievers is that they struggle to have balance. They, at one point or another, I found that most high achievers have been in a valley. They've either lost everything or came very close to losing everything at one point or another in their life. And that could include their, you know, in financially, relationally, right? We look at a lot of, you know, marriages and stuff that have fallen apart. So how have you been able to manage getting to where you're at today and staying healthy, for example, you know, eating healthy, the whole thing?
It kind of, I break it down to kind of three most important things in my opinion to get there and then to have sustainability. Like number one, probably the most important part of all of it is finding the right partner, life partner. So I've been married 23 years here this next month.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And when I say that is, you know, my wife is supportive of what I do. She believes in what I do. That doesn't mean she hasn't been upset at me many times over the years for getting out of balance or for not putting her or my family first. Like that's just part of life. But she's somebody that also like believes in me and supports me. And I think it's important to have that for anybody who's going to be chasing dreams or trying to do something outside of the norm. You have to have somebody that gets that. And I think it's twofold. Like you have to be the kind of partner that understands that that's a huge sacrifice on their side too. So number one, I think, is the right life partner. Number two, when I look at failures I've had in business, it's always the things that I chased that I did because I was chasing money. Right? It's the business ideas I had that I was like, oh, that would be a great money maker. Let's go build that. You know, and those are all the things that, like, it's just not enough when times get hard to stick with it. I think when I look at the things that have been just home runs for me and have been super successful, it's all the things I'm passionate about. Sure. And so creating business around the things that you absolutely love, I think is it makes it easier when things do get out of balance to just keep going.
Yeah.
But the third thing would be just understanding that things are never going to be in balance. It's I call it the upshift principle, but it's just like driving a fast car. Like you're gonna max out those RPMs to a point, and then you need to know when to upshift. You need to know when to slow down so you can actually go faster, right? And when you upshift like that, to get to that point, to be able to really accelerate faster, like you have to put in a lot of work and energy beforehand before you upshift so you can get to that point. Does that make sense?
It makes all the sense.
So I feel like as I look back in my life, it's been periods of like high RPMs revving and then get to a point like before you break, you need to know when to say, okay, let's back off a little bit. Let's let this grow and then let's go again. And it doesn't come without challenges or without sacrifice. I've got 4 kids and there's times I look back and be like, man, I could have shown up more powerfully as a father. I could have been, more present in certain times. But I think all of us experience that
Sure.
to a degree.
I think we do too. I've never heard the analogy though of the upshift or downshift, and I really like that one. Yeah, I really like the one of getting to that high RPM and either shifting up a gear or letting off the gas.
Yeah.
And really, really powerful because it's so true. We live, I believe, again, based on the people that I've talked to and everything, that we live in seasons of life.
Yep.
And Tony Robbins, I think he's the one who says, if you're in winter, eventually summer will come. And if you're in summer, eventually winter will come. Like, meaning nothing good will last forever, but the alternative is also true, right? That nothing bad will last forever, and which is, it's cool to know that and understand that. And I think the more that you do, the more that you can try to have more balance on a day-to-day basis, Do you have any daily rituals that you swear by? Like, you wouldn't be able to do what you do, have a relationship with your wife, be a good father to your 4 kids, build a truly spectacular, dentistry. Are there daily rituals that you wake up and you're like, if I don't do that, like, I'm going to have a bad day type of thing?
I'm kind of a bad one to ask that question too. So here's my thought is I have all the books. I've listened to all the podcasts, like just my personality, how I find it's hard for me to get up in the morning and like, I'm going to do my meditation, then I'm going to hit the gym, and then I'm going to do a cold shower. And like, I think all that stuff is like amazing and good in theory, but I've never been able to do it for more than like a week at a time. Right. I think what I have been consistent on though, is like, I'm a huge believer in, early to rise. I've gotten up at 4 a.m. every day, but Saturdays and Sundays for at least the last 10 years, like, because that's the time when there's total quiet. That's the time when I can be creative driving into the office because there's not a lot of cars on the road. So I can be like in my head, thinking through ideas for business, thinking through what I need to get done. But it's also like a couple hours of dead silence at the office where I can get stuff done. So I'm a big believer in that. And then also like, I'm just a big believer in just living a healthy lifestyle. It's not that I'm super strict with what I eat, but just, staying away from the things that I know, aren't gonna be good for me long term.
Sure.
I think most people that are driven can have more of an addictive personality. And there's history of that, in my bloodlines on both sides. And so I've tried to stay away from that type of stuff, knowing that, just 1 or 2 quick decisions away from, being in a tough spot. And so I think but those things, just trying to live just a basic life, I don't need anything too crazy, fancy when it comes to like, stuff outside the norm, except for cars. But just trying to stay focused on what's important.
I really love that. And I love the awareness that you have, and I love talking to people that have a level of awareness about who they are and what works. I think in listening to you talk, I'm recognizing, and I've recognized previously, that I think sometimes, especially now more than ever, like, there's so much information out there, right? And podcasts, and do the cold plunge and the sauna and the steam room, and eat all meat or eat liver or eat vegan, and like, at a certain point you have to figure out like what works for you. Like what can you actually do and be consistent at, right? And so to have that level of awareness, I'm kind of the same as you to a degree. I really struggle to like wake up and meditate, and I always am telling myself, I'm like, I got to do it. And I've learned lately that I have to give myself more grace, because I try to force myself to do things that don't come naturally to me, and then when I don't do them, I beat myself up.
Yep.
And you have to be careful. It's also dangerous.
Yep.
It's a dangerous place to be, because you're better off doing a little bit than nothing at all. So you have to be kind to yourself too, right?
Yeah, it's this idea of like, I think you need to know like to your core, like who you are, but also like who you're not. And I think you have to go through these phases. Like there was a time where I was doing Ironmans. Like I was I was so strict with my diet. Like I pull up pictures sometimes. I'm like, I can't believe I was in that good a shape, where now, like, I just know like that's not who I am anymore. And I'm okay with that too. And it's not that I couldn't be that. It's just that I'm not willing to make the sacrifices to get to that place, and it's kind of, like you said, I think it's a slippery slope because you follow some of these people and you look to them as like your mentors, but the reality is to do all of those things that a lot of people, I mean, it takes a lot of time, energy, and focus. And so I agree with you. It's more of saying like, okay, who am I? Like, I'm going to eat healthy most of the time, but I'm also like not going to stress if I eat an ice cream sandwich like I did last night at 10:30 at night, hiding from my wife in the kitchen, because I wanted to, that's just who I am.
Yeah, sure. It's so important to be aware and to implement one thing at a time, be kind to yourself. I think I find myself probably similar to you, maybe previously. Every so often I try to implement like 12 things at the same time. It's like, obviously I'm setting myself up for failure. I never realize it in that moment, but then I fail. And then I'm like, oh, well, I tried like changing 10 bad habits all at the same time. And like, no wonder I'm going to fail at that. Right. So I love that. And well, in conclusion here, one of my final questions I like to ask, you have 4 kids. What ages are they?
20, 18, 14, and 12.
Okay.
So 2 out of the house and 2 still at
2
home.
still in. Okay. If you, after building what you've built in business and having 23 years of marriage, and, really living a life of wisdom, gaining more wisdom as you've gotten older, if you could boil all that up and for some reason you could just give a piece of advice to your 4 children to kind of live their life by, right? Like, hey, here's kind of one thing that, you would kind of send them off with, right, into life. And that could be anything. It could be related to anything. What would that piece of advice be to live their life by?
That's a really, really good question. I would say I'm gonna do one personal and one professional. On the personal side, I think it's surrounding yourself with the right kind of people, and also like you said, I think giving yourself grace and really coming to like a really good understanding of like who you are. I think it's not human nature to say like, you know what, I'm actually good at this. Like, this is who I am and I'm actually good at this. And so, I'm going to see that as a strength and I'm going to play off of that. I think for all my kids, I would just tell them, hey, you each have certain talents or strengths and like recognize that, accept that. And, instead of trying to focus so much on being better at the things that you're maybe not good at, like double down on the things that you really are good at and be the best at that. So it's this idea of like, being, an inch deep and a mile wide, of trying to just be a little bit good at everything versus like being an inch wide and a mile deep, just being like really good at some core things in life and recognizing those as your strengths and just owning that. Right.
Sure.
And still focusing on the other things. But I think it took me a long time to be able to, in my own head, have this conversation of like, oh, Brian, you're good at that. Like that's, for whatever reason, I was always very average at most things. And so it took me a long time to figure out like the things that I was good at. So that would be personally to my kids, is like really take some time to discover like what motivates you in life, what you're good at. And then let's create a life around, and a business. And maybe it kind of goes into the business advice too, of like, once you figure out what you're good at, create a business around that. I think in today's world, you could be successful literally at anything if you're passionate about it. Mm-hmm. And so I tell my kids that all the time. Find something you love, like then let's figure out a way how to just build a business around that and be the best at that.
It's powerful, super powerful. There was a day and a time not that long ago where you probably couldn't do that.
No, I couldn't, for sure.
Like your average person, they just had to go, 30, 40, I don't know how many years ago, for sure 80 years ago, less than a century ago, it's like, oh no, go work at the factory.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you like.
Yeah.
That's you have to just go work at the factory, right? Or whatever that might have been, and now, I mean, you can make a healthy living doing literally anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love
Absolutely.
that. And phenomenal advice. And I'm sure that maybe the older ones will watch the podcast that we're filming right now.
Yes, hopefully they do.
Yeah. Are they kind of into that a little bit?
Yeah,
or?
they would. They're
Okay.
at that point in life now where, they're starting to think more about that kind of stuff. And that they'd absolutely, I think they'd eat it up. Maybe not because it's coming from Dad, but
Sure.
but whatever you said, they'd probably
it's
listen to
coming
that.
from a little bit from me too. Well, hey, your dad is a very smart guy, so
Yeah.
if you're listening, definitely listen up to him. Well, Dr. Brian Harris, it was an absolute pleasure, and I appreciate you being on the show. Where can people find you if they're looking to get a hold of you in any way, shape, or form, and talk to you about their confidence and their smile?
Yeah, so best things, social media, just at Dr. Brian Harris, just Dr. Brian Harris. And then website is just drbrianharris.com. So try to keep it super simple.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an honor to be here. I always enjoyed doing this because it's outside the norm of what I get to do every day at the practice. But again, it's been fun watching you grow and see your success, and I wish you the best, and just keep crushing it.
I greatly appreciate that. It means the world to me, and I wish the same for you. And I know for a fact that you taking the time out of your day will impact somebody's life. And it's why I do the podcast, right? If we can change one life, it kind of goes back to what you said. Sometimes we get focused on how many views did we get, how many millions of impressions did we get across all the platforms, and at the end of the day, if one person's watching right now and you said something today that will in any way, shape, or form change their life or inspire them, then we accomplished our goal. Yeah.
100%.
So I appreciate you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for watching. And if you're still watching on YouTube, it would mean the world to me if you drop a comment down below, like the video if you haven't already, and consider subscribing. If you're listening on any platform, it would mean the world if you would leave a 5-star review, and definitely go check out all of Brian's information down below. Give him a follow, reach out to him. And again, I appreciate you watching.